Hello guys, and welcome to a Witcher 3 video essay. I recently replayed The Witcher 3 as it's one of my all-time favourite games. I decided that I would make this video right here, discussing its world building and storytelling elements and basically things that are important to me in a video game. My favourite games are those that have compelling fiction, that you can build and contribute to the game through your actions within it. And of course The Witcher 3 is a prime example of this. It's not the only game to do it, but it is a very successful game and is a great example of allowing the player to influence the game through their decisions. Before we start, I feel the need to make 3 caveats. I will be spoiling the game is number 1. Please do not ruin the game by watching this if you haven't played it and then intend to play it, and I urge you to play it as soon as you can and then come back and watch this video to find out my thoughts and opinions and compare them to your own. The second point is that I will not be talking specifically about gameplay elements beyond the multiple choices you can make. There's no discussion of game mechanics, for example, the combat elements, the combat mechanics. These things are not what I will be discussing. The only thing I want to state right now is that Gwent, the in-game version of Gwent in The Witcher 3, is an incredible card game and I love it. But seriously, I would only have my own opinion to go on the game mechanics, and I'm no expert, nor am I a skilled player of The Witcher 3 or indeed any or many games at all. So I have nothing really to contribute in that realm, which is why my focus is mostly on the world building, the character building and the story of The Witcher. I'm much more interested in that element. The third point is that I will do my best to be as fair and impartial as possible. However, it must be stated before we start that I love this game. So please keep that in mind as we continue through. It's one of my favourites. I feel I've already stated my love for it earlier in this intro. The Witcher 3 really was the first Witcher content that I consumed, but it caused me to go back and read the books. I love them to bits. And so this is kind of my basis for the Witcher lore knowledge. That kind of concludes all of the admin and justification for this video. I just felt the need to make those 3 points there, that's the kind of caveats and where my position is coming from. So with that out of the way, let's begin. White Orchard in many ways is the perfect tutorial area to begin the world of The Witcher. The Witcher 3 in this case. It gives you a small enough area, but also shows you that you can do many different quests and things, from main to side quests, and then also the contracts, and all the different things and areas you can find and explore. It also provides that key introduction to the world and how it works. If you have no prior knowledge of The Witcher and the Witcher world, it's quick to show you 3 truths about the world. The first being that life sucks. There are many examples of this throughout White Orchard, and indeed the rest of the game is one of the key themes. The second reality is that war is happening. In fact, White Orchard focuses inordinately on the impact that the war has just imminently had on the area, as armies have literally just passed through. And that is a key theme throughout the White Orchard section, the tutorial section of the main quest. And the third is that people have, and they're sometimes incredibly strong, prejudices, and they can and they will turn on each other just to survive, because that's the nature of the world that we exist in. Now these 3 realities are very important because they set the tone for the Witcher world, which is in the books and continues that throughout the game, but they're established very strongly here, which is key. As I said, these 3 things are clearly displayed by several of the quests in White Orchard, not least contracts such as Devil by the Well, Tamira and her patient who was injured trying to see a lover, as well as Mislav and his story should you press him in the game to give you the information about it. These quests, along with many other things in the general world building, set up the idea that in the past, present and future The life in the world of The Witcher is built upon these three things. This world building is good because it feels natural for you to explore and discover these things while also completing your goal of finding Yennefer. And the story dangles this in front of you like a carrot. This quest for Yennefer, this desire to find her, is also the story foreshadowing the actual story of the game. You trying to find Yennefer mirrors you trying to find Ciri. And the game in both elements is throwing different obstacles and different quests in front of you as hurdles for you to overcome to find Yennefer, in this case, later Ciri. It also feels like, even if you were to miss all the optional quests and contracts, that you would find this information for yourself, either from idle chat from NPCs, or from conversations in the main questline, or the forced interactions thrown in your path, such as those with disgruntled pubgoers who want to fight you. The final note really set up in White Orchard for the rest of the game is the idea of doing the right thing, and all of its subjective caveats. The right thing in every Witcher 3 scenario is liable to change, and depends on outcomes that you have no idea what they will be. There is an understanding, therefore, from the game and the books that Witchers are supposed to be neutral, in politics, in life, in everything. They're there to kill monsters, do their job, and get paid. White Orchard, and the tutorial section of this game, makes it very clear how difficult this is, which is something that is stressed often in the books, and that often decisions can quickly spiral out of hand or become distant from their initial intent. The key example, the bartender. She hates you, even though you saved her from being beaten to a pulp, but because of the way you did it, by killing 4 people who threatened her and you, she hates you. The goalposts, therefore, are constantly changing. And with people's prejudices, this is enhanced into hatred. This element of characters within a game turning on the main character is not necessarily unique to The Witcher. Every character has adversaries and blockades in their path. But it does feel amplified in The Witcher 3. I think this is particularly because of the role of choice. Each choice, you can only make decisions based on the context of what you know, any clues you've been given. And these can either have non-existent consequences and never be mentioned again, or have large consequences, and there is no way of knowing the difference between. That's good storytelling, and that's good character and world building. Because the decisions you make are based on the game text, how they read, could lead to actions you disagree with. This adds to the game's replayability, as well as providing a shock factor and provoking thought into different issues. White Orchard really sets up all of these world building and story elements that then will persist throughout the rest of the game, but whilst also being able to and beginning to generate the story without going too deep, to keep it as a tutorial, but introducing some key characters, Vesemir, Yen as the key allies, and the Wild Hunt as a clear adversary, before heading into Vizima and meeting with Emir. The Vizima section of the game is reasonably short, but I wanted to include it as a section because of how heavy it is with the world building. This is not least because it sets up more information about Novigrad, which is key to the player's understanding of the world, but as well as generating your potential Witcher 2 decisions through Vorhis questions. It offers key information about the world and the war through Varatra, and it also gives you information on how Nilfgaard views Nordlings. This is from your interactions with the Chamberlain, as well as with Emir. There is also information about Ciri, key context clues and a beginnings into why Geralt cares enough to go and find Ciri on behalf of someone he clearly doesn't like. Emir initially feels in this section to be set up to be a villain, which is understandable. Geralt clearly doesn't like him from the moment he is asked to meet him. You've also seen the devastation that the war caused by Emir has created. in the Nilfgaardians' northern push. Yet he is actually set up to be your ally, which creates this interesting juxtaposition when evaluating good and evil in The Witcher. It is even indicated by Geralt that he and Emir have an unpleasant history, which references back to the books. This history adds to what is a natural dislike for the character. However, by this point and from the dream, it seems clear that Ciri is most important to Geralt, hence his agreement to complete the task set by the Emperor. A phrase that's often used is that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and therefore the Wild Hunt is set up to be the main enemy, despite the fact you also do not trust Emir. But you don't really have too much time to think about it, even though in the end both want Ciri for their own reasons, rather than the reasons that you want to find her. The player really is not given an option in this, but nor should they, as this is the decision to follow the story. And after that point, you are given an entire open world's worth of choices. Canonically, Geralt would never abandon Ciri nor turn down this opportunity, regardless of who it came from. Nor would he ignore Yen after she confirms that Ciri is alive and back on the continent. Ultimately, this section is dense and packed with world building. It is the game covering up 2 games and as many books worth of backstory in a short space of time to bring the player up to speed, especially if they haven't consumed that literature or gameplay before, and to set out the clear task: find Ciri. The first point to make regarding Velen is that it's the opening of the main quest, and does not hold back at all in setting the tone. The game literally drops you underneath a tree with bodies hanging from it and is like, here you go, here's the world. The beauty of the game is that despite this, you can actually now go and do the quests you have in whichever order you desire. The dialogue and story is completely adaptive to how you play, and this is one of The Witcher 3's great storytelling strengths. It has the ability to be played in many different ways and gives the player a wide freedom to do what they want to do. From my perspective, Velen is very interesting because it is my least favourite part of this wonderful game. And I think that comes from how well the world of Velen is built. I want to spend as little time as possible there every playthrough. To me, that shows good world design. Who else would want to be stranded in swamps looking for someone? Not me. It's successfully built to be a creepy marshland with war-hit and superstitious people. I hate it here. I enjoy the quests, but the actual geographical location is by far my least favourite, but it's intended within the world building of the game. Its aim is to break down your comfort and introduce more supernatural elements of The Witcher. For example, the crones, the whispering hillock. Moving into a focus more on the quests, the game continues to build up the backstory, this time with regards to elements such as Ciri. For example, the main quest lines with Kira, the Baron and the Crones, before they offshoot into their individual strands, continue to name drop and reference the books in many ways. This helps to build the character, particularly between Geralt and Kira, who is framed as an early ally to the Witcher, and their historic knowledge and acquaintance of each other becomes important and a topic of conversation often between them. Therefore, you can say that the initial quest between Geralt and Kira serves to introduce 2 different things. This is firstly how well Geralt knows Ciri, starting to build the relationship between Ciri and Geralt that the player, if they have no prior book or game knowledge, will not have. This is side by side with the second point of gaining knowledge and understanding about the Wild Hunt, mages and elves. Again, more of the supernatural element. Velen therefore serves as a starting point for developing characters and relationships, and also introducing another adversary. In this case, it's the crones. It also serves to introduce more complicated characters. These are a key part of the storytelling throughout the entirety of The Witcher, and is an element that both the games and the books, in my opinion, do very, very well. The Baron, for example, is a wife beater, but he is someone who assists you and seemingly wants to make amends. His fate is decided by you and your actions. And if the most dramatic version of events occurs, this is a shock, despite who he is. Therefore, although it's clear throughout that your actions have consequences, there is still a dramatic element to seeing it play out in front of you. The Baron is the first time you're likely to see that happen, and it comes from how the game builds the complexity of his character. Within Kira's side mission too, this serves as a reminder that everyone wants to use you for something. A trait that, to be fair, Geralt has experienced many times from mages if you've read the books. Yet again, her fate can be decided by Geralt's actions. Her life is essentially in your hands, but this isn't necessarily felt until much farther down the line, and so the impact can be felt much later than, for example, with the Baron. The complexity of these characters and what they have to offer makes you take interest and care about. This is very important and very key for side quests to do in a game that is this large. There needs to be a draw, and the story and the world building of these side quests provide it. You have to guide Geralt to find and participate in these quests. You're not thrown in front of them deliberately. There is no linear element to this part of the story. You must find them and do them of your own accord and wishes. And that's among a whole plethora of random side quests that can be stumbled upon instead. The three themes of the prologue, therefore, are maintained heavily in Velen. Especially the idea that for the everyday person, life sucks, and this is the theme that is most stressed in this section of the game. In summary, Velen serves as a reminder of your consequences, a creepy setting for the introduction of a different enemy, a more supernatural enemy, and the introduction of an open world, designed to provide you with as much information about the past and present as possible to inform those incredibly tough decisions that Geralt must make in order to find Ciri. The Novigrad section of The Witcher 3 is probably one of my favourites. The city, as cities are, is a smaller area, but is dense with activity and quests. We are once again immediately shown another adversary in the story, in terms of the wholly unlikable Caleb Menga, and seeing how mages are being treated by the Eternal Fire. We have previously worked alongside the Eternal Fire in Velen, although it could be missed. Tamara, the Baron's daughter, is a follower of their faith. Now we see what horrific actions are inspired by their beliefs. Novigrad, therefore, is shown to be a city of golden superstition. This is led by Menga and the Eternal Fire. They are in control for both of those reasons. They are the key adversaries for Geralt, and this is particular in the Triss parts of the story. The quests with Triss and Corrine, back to back, kind of give you some insight into past events. This includes going deeper into your history with Ciri, should you choose to tell Corrine everything you can remember during your conversation with her prior to the Aneromancy. Geralt has not seen Ciri since the books, so all the memories he can draw provide insights into their history and further build their relationship that might not be known by the average player. This is absolutely crucial for non-book readers to understand why Geralt is so eager to find her, and it builds on previous conversations that have been had with the Baron, and Keira Metz. On top of this, Ciri's flashbacks, both in Novigrad and in Velen, provide good context for her mindset and actions too. This is added on to Geralt's memories, serves to develop her character for the player. Playing through these story sections as Ciri also means that the storytelling is more compelling and less heavy-handed. Rather than having the Baron speak to you for 10 minutes about what happened, it's much more impactful as a game for the player to be hands-on and play as Ciri. It's actually a huge part of what makes the story so compelling, being able to play it from these different sides. Returning now to Novigrad, Geralt is once again sent on a wild goose chase. Triss has no information on Ciri, despite the fact she's named by Yennefer as the contact to make in Novigrad, but instead is Dandelion, but he is wound up in prison. The story therefore follows Geralt trying to find the Bard, and at times the game almost forgets that this is a wider search for Ciri, because it's focusing entirely on the here and now of getting Dandelion out of prison. This is particularly common throughout the game, and is similar to Velen, and is replicated once again in Skellige. It feels like something always gets in the way. However, unlike Velen, in Novigrad, Geralt gets to act on himself a bit more, and people are slightly more keen to help him. In Velen it was very much people require something from you first. However, in Novigrad it's a little less, the exception of course being Dijkstra. When I say that something gets in the way, I must stress that the game frames this well within the story. It doesn't feel like a distraction, it feels necessary, and that's due to how compelling these quests are. Triss's side quests, for example, are absolutely within Geralt's character to assist with, and so it is well within the character and the story for Geralt to be distracted by this. On this point, both of these side missions are taken up as a result of Geralt's desire to do so, rather than being a goose chase for information. This changes the pace completely, and you're almost encouraged to spend more time on these things. Geralt as a character would always want to help Triss in exchange for her help. And although a book Geralt would likely not get involved in a quest like Reason of State, the game Geralt, or indeed the player themselves, through interactions with Radovid, may feel the need to do so. The clear goal here therefore is to try and find Dandelion for information about Ciri, as the side quests no longer weave in and out of the main quest as they did in Velen. Reason of State and Triss's quests have no real bearing on the main quest outcomes directly, but instead have impacts on the wider world and the future of the continent. These are arguably just as important. The Novigrad section does well, therefore, to hide the role of consequence. It often feels like there is no impact of your actions, as a result of the lack of weaving between story and side missions. This section feels often like three linear stories rather than one intertwining one. This is aside from Dijkstra and the main quest's overlapping elements. Consequences, however, do actually prove to be just as important as in this section as they were previously. The fate of Sarah, the Godling, the mages, the non-humans, and whether Dijkstra will finance your defense in Kaer Morhen are all up for grabs, not to mention who you will romance. This is on top of the fact that the three themes from the prologue are maintained, and in this section in particular, prejudice is leaned on and exposed heavily. My final feeling around Novigrad is that it is a reward from the game. It's a reward for surviving running in swamps for an age. You are brought somewhere with so much going on in a dense space. It makes it feel much less like you're running for clues about Ciri in a sparse land. The only real downside to this is that there's no roach. The Skellige main quest is actually shorter than I previously remembered before replaying the game, but is actually an absolutely beautiful reward after a hard and difficult slog through the marshes of Velen and the streets of Novigrad. Skellige is a reward because it's damn beautiful, and the music is absolutely excellent. It's really a joy to be there and roam around the Isles. Novigrad at times makes you feel like you have so many main quests, and it's very easy to get sidetracked by helping any of Geralt's other mates. But on Skellige this is much more limited. Here it feels like you could get lost forever, but not with allies, or their quests, but instead with just a sheer number of areas and islands to explore. The quest to choose the ruler of Skellige is really the only distraction from the main quests. It's clear overall that the priority is still to find Ciri. Yennefer herself is completely fixated on this the entire time you're there. The only sidetrack with Yennefer is to help her with the Djinn in The Last Wish. In terms of the world, Skellige is shown to be a harsh but fair world, one of tradition but an honourable one. You are appreciated often more in Skellige than anywhere else until Yennefer's actions occur at the Garden of Freya. There is much less of a trade-off required to get information too. Perhaps that's why the section feels a bit shorter. Before you needed to help the Baron to get information. Now you are welcomed and offered assistance as an old friend by Crach and Crate, and later by Ermion. Crach asks for assistance in return, but not prior to giving you information about Ciri, as he cares as much about her as you do. Therefore you can find out all the information before turning to help him. This lack of a trade-off is also a result of Yennefer's character. Her character is built around the fact that she is far more direct and gets what she wants. This is clear from the theft of the Mask of Ouroboros and the destruction of the Garden of Freya. She does what she wants and what she needs to do to find Ciri without thinking of the consequences. This helps force the story along, and is framed very well in part of that as part of her character. This provides a complete juxtaposition to the player and to Geralt, who have spent this entire game, in The Witcher 3, up until this point concerned with exactly what the consequences are of their actions, as brutal as they may be. The quests also stand to show what kind of relationship Geralt and Yen have, which builds heavily on the books. They often argue, but each of them kind of enjoys that. We get a lot of book history, in particular from the Last Wish quest, as well as an exploration of Yen's room and our initial arrival and chat with her. These elements give the player an understanding of her character, as well as their relationship, developing not only Geralt's relationship with her, but also Ciri's, and why she cares about Ciri so much. It means that the player may actually warm to Yennefer over time. A new player with no prior book knowledge may have been hit with her abrasiveness in Vizima earlier in the game, which is obviously a key part of her character from the books, but this gives her a chance to redeem that in this section of the game. Skellige then, while short in terms of main quests, is an absolutely awesome bit of the game. The scenery and music alone is absolutely wonderful, and the landscape is such that you can get easily lost. It gives a view into the lives and world of the islanders, a complete contrast from that of those on the continent. It also helps to develop key character relationships that build the story. The Kaer Morhen segment of The Witcher seems to fly by, as it is by far its shortest main quest section. It plunges you into what at the time feels like an epic finale to your long chase for Ciri. The story feels very fast paced from here. After a meeting with Emir, it's straight to Kaer Morhen. We have but 3 tasks to do to reveal the identity of Uma. Here the mood is much more tranquil and the quests seem almost trivial, but there is a lot of information to gather. You get a lot about Geralt's past with Triss and how Yen feels about that, not to mention lore from previous games. For example, the hole in the wall you take with Lambert in his quest is created at the start of the first game, and Geralt and Lambert discuss that at length. The quests serve to essentially be character building within the Witcher school, and the wider area of Kaer Morhen is home to many quests that build on the harsh history of the Witchers. It's clear that these characters matter a lot to Geralt. As previously with Ciri, the game does not hold back in showing you why through your quests of each of them, before the crescendo of the battle, not to mention the night getting drunk with Lambert and Eskel. The quest with Yen is particularly interesting. The Elven Mage in the Megascope gives you a hint, basically telling you that your choices with Ciri in the finale will determine whether she survives or dies, and whether the White Frost wins or is stopped. This is not the first time that the game foreshadows the conclusion either, although the first time it is hidden in a side quest in Velen. A note in this section I think is interesting is that I think Avallac'h's character is probably the least book accurate in the game. He felt to me, whilst reading the books, that he is quite a mischievous character, but this is not portrayed so much in the game, whereas he is much more serious, sage-like and stoic. He also has a distinct hatred of humans, which is toned down from the books to the games. It's clear that his prejudice is still there, but it would be nice for the game to address the past between Geralt and Avallac'h a bit more. By contrast, the call for allies essentially shows who is willing to put their life on the line for Geralt, and who won't or can't, as well as showing you some past consequences, such as with Dijkstra, and whether he will actually support you. Then you get to the key point. You find Ciri, and finding her allows the game to explore the extent of her powers, and this develops further into the late game. It also gives chance to understand why she had vanished for so long and why the Wild Hunt is after her. It really answers the questions that you've been building over the course of the game. The game treats you, the player, and Geralt as one on this element, as you and him have both toiled for hours and hours of gameplay to find her, and although the job feels done, this conversation acts as your reward for that key information. But the job's not done, because it's back to Kaer Morhen, where the initial finale, in inverted commas, takes place. I have to be honest when I say this, for the first time I played through this battle, it genuinely gave me goosebumps. I think it is genuinely an exquisite battle, and leaves you on the edge of your seat at all times. Not to mention that without prior knowledge, you think it's the conclusion of the story, that it's this battle and that's it. But then after that, the game just keeps going. My final comment on the Kaer Morhen section is with a major spoiler. So once again, please, if you have not played through the game, I would definitely click away now. As I was going to say, my last comment on Kaer Morhen is about Vesemir's death. It was genuinely very shocking to me when I first played through. I understand from the Witcher world that key characters can die. You may have seen it with the Baron, with Kira, and others throughout. Yet something about Vesemir and the Witchers as a whole makes them feel almost invincible. To see Vesemir's death, therefore, was genuinely shocking. And the aftermath of it and his funeral show the relationship that Ciri and Vesemir had, and it significantly affects her. Vesemir's death is clearly a defining moment in her character development, and this has an impact for the finale, the actual finale of the game. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to refer to anything after the Battle of Kaer Morhen as the finale. That's what I've titled the section. And this section includes probably my favourite quest from the entire game. This is the quest in which you travel to various different worlds to find Geralt, alongside Avallac'h. The backstory and interactions between Avallac'h and Geralt, later with Geralt also, serve to build the world exponentially, and in fact build several worlds as you travel through them. The attention in this quest to the lore and backstory of The Witcher, to the books, is incredible. This is increased also with the interaction with the Lodge of Sorceresses and Philippa Eilhart, which allows for some absolutely extraordinary dialogues between characters that develop past relationships between characters, such as Yen and Philippa, but also design future plans for them. The actual finale quest, the ending, the final battle if you will, in my opinion is not as tense as the Battle of Kaer Morhen, not least because you have the Skellige and the Nilfgaardians on your side. With the Battle of Kaer Morhen, it feels very much backs against the wall, which makes the tension rise. In this, it feels much more like you're on even footing, although it becomes quickly clear that it's a very difficult battle, and that their support is not going to make it any easier. It still has those grand and epic elements. My favourite character of the entire series is unfortunately killed right before Geralt arrives on the scene, and the fights in general with Caranthir and Eredin are as epic and challenging as any boss battle should be. I find the variations on the ending to be very interesting also. I've never received the bad ending, based on my choices anyway, although I am aware that in it Geralt hunts down the final crow, which I feel that is something could have been included in the other endings, perhaps with Geralt and Ciri both fighting together and getting back her medallion that she took from Vesemir's body. The good endings are very interesting as well, particularly depending on what happens in Reason of State and whether you got involved whatsoever. Ciri as an Empress is personally something I don't think fits with her character, but I can see how it is an option that some players would take. The Witcher ending is of course my preferred one, and the one that I often choose to fit Ciri's desires. But that's in my opinion, and the beauty of The Witcher is that it can be played in many different ways and replayed in many different ways, with different endings and different outcomes. Something to be said for the way that the storytelling works is that all the endings offer a great rounding off of the story, and the way that the final cutscenes explain what has happened, they're crafted beautifully. It rounds off such an incredible story very nicely, but also leaves you wanting more. It seems that something more really is what we may be getting in the future. I just hope that it does the story justice, because a storyline crafted here in The Witcher 3 is fantastic and highly deserving of praise. They did very well to conclude such a sprawling and open game, and to wrap up a trilogy at that. I feel that the developers and story writers must be careful when potentially unwrapping to make future stories and games. The pure attention to detail throughout this game is impeccable, and although some decisions I do not agree with personally, I feel that overall the game builds a world, story and characters brilliantly. To me it's a shining example in that regard, and I hope that this essay has at least begun to show you why I feel that way. Thank you very much for watching and listening to this video essay on The Witcher 3. I hope it was interesting and worth viewing. I've written many short, long, medium essays in my time, and I really just wanted to try my hand at making one into a video, and I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment with any improvements, suggestions, or anything else you would like to see, or any thoughts you have on what I've discussed. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Please let me know. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. It would mean a lot to me. And once again, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye for now.